Hello, everyone, and welcome to Snap Take. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, the official podcast of Marvel Snap Zone. And guess what? This is exactly the 2-year anniversary of me making this YouTube channel. This isn't the 2-year anniversary of Snap Take. We're going to do something big for that when we get there. But this is the 2-year anniversary of basically the podcast coming to YouTube. So, hey, happy anniversary to the pod and to us, where we almost started this journey. Today, we've got 4 brand new decks for you. These are top meta decks, including this one decks that you're not going to find anywhere else. We're not going to cover Sanctum decks today. I felt like I was going to make a bunch of Sanctum decks in this video or a second Sanctum video, but 2 things are in the way of that. First and foremost, Sanctum decks are kind of solved. We know what's good in the mode. There's occasional extra good cards. Some people are running like an extra Gore, an extra Vision, Buddy threw in an Electra. But we generally know what's good. If you're curious about what decks are good, it's basically Scream decks, the sort of Cannibal, Guardians-y good stuff decks, some Zoo decks, and Move. There's variations on what goes in each of those, but we covered those over the last 2 days. So if you missed either of those videos, check either yesterday or the day before's videos, and you'll get absolutely all that stuff. The other reason we're not doing a second video of Sanctum decks today is that today is OTA day, and as soon as that OTA goes live, we will have a video up for it. We're going to kick today off, though, talking about this Burs deck. Burs was in the top 10 of the Infinite Leaderboard each of the last 2 seasons. He was number 5 2 seasons ago and number 9 last season. This season, he's currently climbed back into the top 15 with this list. He's basically looking for a list that solves a lot of what the meta is doing. And the meta has sort of moved on from Legion. There's very, very few decks right now running Legion. There's a fair amount of Ajax stuff floating around, but that's not really a big deal. If you run Luke Cage, you get to steal extra cubes from them at the end of the game. And all of a sudden, all of the reveal stuff is back. For a while, Scar was everywhere and Ongoing was everywhere, and Gore was sort of falling off. But right now, I don't know why, but having a little mini on reveal renaissance. So Burs decided to go with a Gore Iron Man list. This is basically trying to ideally use anti-venom to hit Iron Man or Gore in order to really take over the game. Remember that there will be 4 decks today as we go forward with this one. This deck needs Anti-Venom, Gore, Agent Venom, and Ravonna. That's 4 cards needed that are high series, although 1 is series 4. Cassandra Nova can be Shadow King, and Sage can be Wolfsbane. Those are your replacements for this list. So, turn 1 you pass. Obviously, there's no 1-drop. Turn 2, Agent Venom over Ravonna. Now, Ravonna is amazing if you don't see magic, but if you do see magic, Agent Venom is strictly better, plus you want the extra chance to draw the cards. Very quickly. Agent Venom is bad for anti-venom, right? It is actively negative. Every other card in the deck, it has at least some value for, except Juggernaut and Cosmo, and like it's dead even for those. Getting a +4 on Gore is huge. Iron Man becomes basically really a +6. The Sage benefit, the Mystique, if it copies either the Gore or the Iron Man, all of these are absolutely huge, and thus that Agent Venom is something you want to get. That Agent Venom is something you want to get down early. If you have the right stuff in deck, that can be a snap, but I would be careful with that. Ravonna is still very good here. You're not like sad to play Ravonna, right? But Ravonna is not as good as Agent Venom. Turn 3, you want Luke, Cassandra, or Magic. If you know what your opponent's playing and you know they're not likely running anything, you can just bump Magic up to the top. Cassandra Nova is here for one very specific reason. This deck was having a lot of trouble with Arishem lists. Cassandra Nova fundamentally individually turns that into a plus matchup, so feel free to run that. If you are seeing a lot of Arishem and struggling and you got Gorgon, feel free to throw Gorgon in instead of Cassandra if you don't own Cassandra Nova. Turn 4, you want Anti-Venom over 3, and if your deck is really good still, when you Anti-Venom, you can snap. And a really good deck for an Anti-Venom looks like Gore, Iron Man, Mystique still on the list. To a lesser extent, Juggernaut and Cosmo are very good here, and Sage is very good here. But your real big hits are Gore and Iron Man, and then you're pretty happy to hit Mystique as well. Because that basically lets you go from almost no power on the last turn to absolutely crazy power, as you can then drop Gore and Mystique, Iron Man and Mystique, or some combination thereof. Turn 5, Magic over Iron Man or Gore. Obviously, Iron Man or Gore if you have Ravonna. Magic on turn 5 if you're worried about them turning it off. If you think that you can get them to blow a location changer early, that's why you wait to Magic. Turn 6, you want Mystique on Iron Man or Gore. If you can play any combination of Mystique, Iron Man, and Gore on turn 5, 6 or 7, that's your basic snap condition here. That's what you're looking for if you want to get extra cubes. You ideally, if and this can all go into turn 7 as the case may be, right? Like turn 6 is listed here, but if there's a magic, then it becomes turn 7. If you can go if you play Iron Man on turn 5 or 6, and then you play Mystique and Sage, Mystique and Juggernaut, Mystique and Cosmo on turn 7, that's usually enough to win. That's fundamentally what you're looking to do. There is also the Ravonna play, where with Ravonna, you can play Gore on turn 5, and then on turn 6, you can Iron Man Mystique. All of that is a snap condition as long as you manage to accrue enough power throughout the game, and you'll know fundamentally pretty quickly if you have. This deck is absolutely wild. It is incredibly strong, and it is again top 15 on the Infinite Leaderboard. Burs, knowing his pedigree, will likely continue climbing with it. It fundamentally, unless people start running a counter to Magic, counters almost everything that the metagame is doing right now. Now, before we get back to the deck that we're going to talk about next, the deck that is the thumbnail 69% win rate deck, I'm going to ask you to hit that sub button as we try to hit 25,000 subs in 2025. We need your help and support to get there, and in return, we're going to give you at least 3 brand new decks every single day. We do 7 days a week of videos. This week, we will have done 9 videos. If you want more Marvel Snap content than anyone, please make sure you hit that sub button. Liking and commenting also really helps the channel, really helps us out, and it can enter you to win a Sam Wilson Captain America. We will be giving away our last Sam Wilson Captain America on this Sunday's video. All I have to do is sub, like, and comment. Each day's sub, like, and comment, each day's comment and like once you're subbed enters you to win the season pass. Reminder: subs are totally free on YouTube. All you have to do is leave a comment, and I'll tell you before the end of the video what comment you should leave. The deck I wanted to talk about today is Thursday 4's Bird and Bat. I played this on stream earlier. You can find the VOD of that, and you can check my win rate. You can watch me absolutely rock with this list. I immediately went 5-2 with this list, and my losses were 50-50s, where just like, oh, that Cannonball pushed Dracula to the right instead of the left, that type of thing. Or a Red Wing had a choice of um, hitting like a cheaper card or a Red Hulk, and I hit the wrong thing. This list is incredibly strong. I knew this list was good because I played against Thursday with it, and he took 8 from me. He just dropped so much power in different lanes. I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. All of a sudden, there was just power all over the place thanks to Cloak, coming from nowhere. And that coming from nowhere is really important because that coming from nowhere means extra cubes. I think this list is absolutely incredible. I think this is I know Husky is like ranked 2 or 3 with his Red Wing list right now. I've had more success with this one. I think this one is more user friendly and better for most people, although Good Machine is obviously nothing to scoff at. You can find Thursday Snap at that exact name on Blue Sky. This deck needs Madam Web and Red Wing. Aranya or Ghost Spider can be Iron Fist. And reminder that Ghost Spider is going to series drop in a week. So if you don't have Ghost Spider, you can get that when series drops happen this coming Tuesday. And then if you don't have Aranya, you can run Iron Fist in that spot. Red Hulk can be Magneto. Obviously, that's a real simple play. And Makari can be Wasp. Now, there's a really cool thing that Ghost Spider does that Iron Fist doesn't here, right? Where on turn 3, you can drop Red Wing or Vulture without having any other move card, and then you can play Ghost Spider on turn 4 to move that card while also playing the other mover, that Vulture or Red Wing. Or you can drop like an Aranya that turn 2, right? It lets you make that turn 3 play if you played, for example, a Craven on turn 2, and then now all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I really wish I could still move that card. You can also later because a Cloak is really cool for that in this list as well. Also, when opponents see Cloak, they're going to start assuming Heimdall, which is another way to get extra cubes. A Red Hulk in this list can be Magneto. Red Hulk is really good in the meta right now. People are not spending all their energy. So feel free to run Red Hulk. You'll be fine. If you have it, Magneto is also still always excellent. Magneto's the best generic 6 around as far as Series 3 and below goes. If you don't have Makari, Makari is here for one very simple reason. You want to keep stuff out of your hand so that when you do decide to play your Red Wing, you don't have to worry about pulling an extra card. Well, Wasp will do the same thing as Makari in this case. Wasp is just an 01 and Makari is an 04. So you would rather have Makari, but either way, you'll be fine running Wasp. This list is 25-11. That is a 69% win rate. Nice. I personally went 5-2, and 20-9 was the record for Thursday. So that's 25 and 11. Meanwhile, this has a well over 1 cube rate. If I was trying to hit infinite and I had access to these cards, I think this is an absolutely amazing thing to play. Also, worth noting, if you're trying to hit infinite right now, hey, go have at it. A lot of people are playing the new mode. Personally, I think you should be grinding the new mode, but if you have enough cards or if you've grinded enough or you're playing enough, this is a really, really good time to hit infinite. Turn 1, you want Aranya, you can just cold drop Aranya. Turn 2, Madam Web over Craven. Sometimes your Madam Web is going to get hit with a Red Guardian. That seems worse than it is because this list also runs Dracula, and when they do that on the Madam Web, you suddenly get a like 15-20 power Dracula, and that's pretty nice. You can also just feel free to drop Craven as you choose. Uh, Turn 3, you want Vulture or Red Wing if you have a move card at all. And that could be Madam Web, that could be an Aranya, and at that point you can just immediately Aranya with Vulture or Red Wing. Or it could be Ghost Spider. If you have Dracula, I will unless I already have Cloak or I already have Madam Web in hand, I will often play that move card on Vulture or Red Wing over playing Dracula on turn 4. Dracula's perfectly fine on turn 5. Vulture and Red Wing are fine here. Turn 5 is the same, but moving Vulture and Red Wing are fine here, or playing Vulture and Red Wing are fine here. Turn 5 is the same basic thing as turn 4. Remember that Cloak is a really, really great card here. So if you played Vulture or Red Wing, then you play Dracula. Now you can play like um, a Cloak and a name of card, a Cloak in either one of your threes, or a Cloak and a Madam Web, and you'll be totally fine. You can then move those cards to that Cloak. You'll get an extra free big card in the process, and then you can remove either that Vulture or that Red Wing later. And Vulture is fairly often just a 16 power card in this list, which is, bigger than Giganto. And then turn 6, you're basically usually playing Giganto or Hulk. That's it. Remember to move a card off Madam Web if you have the ability, or move a card to Cloak if you have the ability, and then you play whatever the biggest 6 you have is. That is rarely going to be Infinite. You're usually making a play on turn 5, but hey, between Red Wing and Dracula, you're fairly likely to get that 20 power on the board anyway. This list puts up a ton of power in very, very surprising ways. It also doesn't have a lot of board presence early, which is really nice into all the Affliction stuff out there. This is an absolute monster of a list. This is the first time I've liked Red Wing. I again recognize that he is very good in Husky's hands, but I have not liked the card in basically anything until this list. Next up, we've got to talk about Diamondback, the new card this week. Diamondback is a 3/3 that gives -2 to any opponent's cards in that lane that are afflicted. We ask every week top players what they think of the card. I also have top player thoughts for the 3 new Sanctum cards. We'll talk about those tomorrow, so don't worry about that. We will get to those. It's just I feel like people are still unlocking them, and I want more sample size. Sizer, the #1 player in the Infinite Leaderboard, says about Diamondback, 311 is amazing stats, i.e. your opponent has 4 cards there, they're afflicted by a Hazmat or whatever else, and that basically makes Diamondback a 311. But my grandma can beat me if she plays Luke Cage. Well, Sizer's grandma doesn't know a whole lot about Marvel Snap, so if she can beat him with Luke Cage, then then Diamondback is obviously not very good in that matchup. So that's worth noting. Luke Cage is obviously a hard counter to this. Outside of that, though, you should be able to fairly often get a 311. And even if you're getting a 3/9, that's bigger than Gladiator. That's a really solid Sage, etc. Safety Blade, a writer from Marvel Snap Zone, who's often near the top of the Infinite Leaderboard. He created the Slayer Blade, Cannonball, Professor X list a while back. He says, very strong, you'll be sad about Luke, but it doesn't matter, because you're not going to see Luke every game, and because this card is incredibly, incredibly good. Jimmy Dickens, another top player in that Husky butt group of players, also writes for SnapFan, says, loving her, opens Afflict to more styles, i.e. we can start doing other things with Afflict. We'll talk more about what those are later this video. Shang Enjoyer, another top player who builds really, really cool lists. We talked about one of those 2 days ago. Good, but vulnerable to Luke on turn 6, and I think that's where Luke is scary. An early Luke isn't a big deal for these lists. You just run for 1. Sometimes you run for 2. It's the turn 6 Lukes, the players who are smart enough, good enough, and run decks that are able to run turn 6 Luke that is so strong, because that's how they get 8 cubes. At that point, you're pretty sure, like, oh, they're not running Luke Cage. They drop it at the end of the game, they get those extra cubes against you. That's a problem. Pluto, another player who's been at the top of the Infinite Leaderboard, says, will elevate Afflict. Nice and simple. This is going to make Afflict better. Jocko, who's been both number 2 and last season number 4, says, I don't know if it makes the cut. Um, uh, Other people are going to sort of explain why that's the case, but I think that's an interesting take because a 311 should be so good it always makes the cut, right? Except we're not always sure. That Jocko's going to be the only person I think really that says that. Mr. ELA, a great deck builder, says makes affliction ceiling higher, but usually in a lane you win and dies to Luke. Not must buy. Okay, so I think that's important. Affliction ceiling being higher, right, is good, but affliction already has a super high ceiling. So like you can keep raising that ceiling, but like does that help when Luke is the problem? So you can play this list perfectly well without this card. BBAK says this is a must-have in Toxic decks after the first week. BBAK is currently ranked 2. Sizer and BBAK really liking this does carry a lot of weight for me. Burs, who we spoke about earlier, amplifies something that's already broken when it works. So Burs, again, a top 10 player for the past 2 seasons, notes the problem with this card, if there is a problem, that when the deck works, it's really hard to beat. Diamondback is great in a deck that doesn't necessarily need its extra power. Smiles, a great player who recently hit number 2 with Surfer, says pretty strong, nice and simple. Meanwhile, Dragon, another top player who's rocks in tournaments, says has potential, one to watch when affliction isn't expected, and that's important. Once Luke gets down a little bit, it is Diamondback week, so we're seeing a lot of Luke. Once Luke goes down a little bit, this card just shoots up. Blue Tearz, whose deck we'll talk about pretty soon this video, says strong addition to any affliction build, and that any affliction build is important. Again, we've been sort of dancing around this with Dickens and now Blue Tearz. Meanwhile, Ika, one of the best deck builders, we love Ika, says permanent spot in affliction and opens up hybrid decks. Hybrid decks are awesome. What are hybrid decks, you ask? Well, hybrid decks are stuff like this. This is a Serra Surfer that's toxic, but that's not going all in on being toxic. Fundamentally, what Hazmat and Diamondback do is give you a lane that you just sort of overrun. You can use that for a lane and Ajax for a lane, right? Trust me, Hazmat as a 311 is more than capable of winning lanes, especially if your opponent puts something big there. You can drop a U.S. agent and U.S. agent and Diamondback in a lane, and you just absolutely like face ram a lane, and then Ajax can take absolute care of another lane. And when you combine those two, you basically won, right? That seems like one amazing way to win games of Marvel Snap. Of course, you can also win with Surfer, right? Diamondback is a 3, and you just Scorpion, and then you've got an extra 2 to 4 power in that lane. If you've got Diamondback as a 3/7, Surfer makes it a 3/9, and that helps you win a game. This is a very cool list from Ika. This is also one that's just, again, going to get bigger as Luke sort of departs the meta. You can find Ika streaming basically every day at twitch.tv/Ika_MTS. Ika raided me yesterday. Thank you for that raid, my wonderful friend. Again, Ika is the most prolific deck builder in the game. Top level stuff. This deck needs Ajax, U.S. Agent, Diamondback, and Cassandra Nova. Red Guardian can be Rogue. You'll be fine. Red Guardian is better into the meta, Rogue is better into Luke Cage, and Luke is sort of your problem. Rocket and Groot can be Ghost or Negasonic. Ghost has a lot of value here in that it's a 3/5. It's not quite as big as Rocket and Groot if it gets 2 hits, right? But Ghost means you're not going to have Prio, and that's really good. If you find yourself having Prio a lot, Negasonic is great. I'm going to start putting Negasonic in more stuff because I've played a lot of Sanctum, and that's just like this big reminder how freaking good Negasonic is. All right. Ignore the toxic part of this. This list does have a high 60% win rate right now. Turn 1. This isn't the right turn by turn. We're not restarting this. Just so y'all know. Right now, 5 minutes before I recorded, my stomach is killing me. My cat threw up, and it is super late at night, and my 8-year-old son cannot sleep. Sorry about that. We're just going to keep this going. Okay, so turn 2, you will play Scorpion. You're also happy to play US Asia, but Scorpion is your main play. Turn 3, generally speaking, you want to play Rocket and Groot if you have Prio. You're fine dropping a Luke Cage, although it's not ideal. Cassandra Nova is again largely here for that Arishem matchup, but she does have extra value. If your opponent hasn't played a lot of cards, then Cassandra Nova is really solid. Cassandra Nova says the opponent will have extra negative cards, and then Diamondback is incredibly strong. Turn 4 is fundamentally the same thing as turn 3. You're not doing anything special, fancy, or different on turn 4. Although this will often, if your opponent has started to fill a lane, be the turn that you want to play Diamondback. Red Garden is also an amazing turn for play if they drop something important on turn 3. For example, if you can take out a Bullseye, you are now extremely favored, and that's a snap condition. Turn 5, you usually want to play Sarah. Sarah gives you a lot of opportunality. Sarah turns Ajax into a 4 and Hazmat into 1. That's 5. That still lets you play US Agent on the last turn of the game, which is game winning, especially if you had, again, Diamondback in a lane, or you had already gotten the Scorpion Cassandra Nova stuff to get up enough negatives. You should be really, really set then. But you can also play, if you played Hazmat earlier, you can play Ajax and Luke. You can play Ajax and Diamondback. You can ignore the Ajax and you can go Sarah. And then you can go Diamondback, Silver Surfer, um, Hazmat, and US Agent, stuff like that. Just through the roof power all over the board, right? You can end up playing Brood on turn 3 because of these combinations. Personally, I badly want to fit Galacta in here because Galacta is just so good in this kind of deck. I understand why it's not here; it just doesn't fit. But it would be so good here just because Galacta plus Brood is freaking damn near Ajax. But whatever. So Sarah is often your first real snap condition here if you see it. You can also feel free to drop Ajax. If you're pretty sure your opponent's not running a build that has Enchantress or Shang-Chi, you can drop Ajax in a build. Ajax without Luke Cage will almost certainly solo a lane. Ajax with Luke Cage, you might need a little bit extra help there, but you can just drop Ajax on turn 5, fine. And then you spend turn 6, very simply, you just go Diamondback Hazmat. And then you should be able to win because, again, you just played your opponents got -3 everywhere in that lane, right? And while Diamondback is sitting there being a 3/11. And that should usually enough to win if you played Ajax into Hazmat Diamondback. If you already had Diamondback out, feel free to drop like Hazmat and Surfer here, stuff like that, and then you should be totally fine. Your turn 5 of having a workable Sarah and Ajax with the right extra cards in hand is your snap condition. That's what you're looking for when you decide to snap or pass with this list. Hey, I'll be streaming, tonight I'll be streaming exclusively on Twitch. If you don't know, there are over 1,000 charms in Twitch drops right now. I'll be streaming at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to do our podcast that comes out this Saturday live on Twitch, so make sure you check that out. And if you want to win a season pass, just answer the question, which new card this week is your favorite? All right, so this is Blue Tearz for his control. Blue Tearz is a excellent player. He used to be a conquest main. Occasionally now he plays ladder. And whenever he decides to play ladder, he climbs into the top 100 because, again, this is an excellent Marvel Snap player. He played this list. He sent this to me a couple days ago and was like, I climbed into the 70s. Well, he's now climbed to about rank 50 with this list. That is really cool. This is a very controlly list. Everyone would tell you right now that Darkhawk isn't good and doesn't work. That seems to be incorrect because, again, this list basically immediately climbed near the top of the Infinite leaderboard. This deck needs both Zabu and Darkhawk. That's kind of it, though. And reminder that Zabu is series dropping finally very soon. Sam and Iron Patriot can be Kate, Grandmaster, Mirage, and Jeff. I really like Grandmaster with this type of list. Grandmastering either Zabu or Korg are both very, very good plays. And Sam Wilson is not terribly important. If you do have Sam and not Iron Lad, and you do have Cull Obsidian, who is also, again, series dropping to 4, then Cull Obsidian makes a lot of sense as a 4-drop over Iron Lad. Iron Patriot, Cassandra Nova, if you don't have her, can just be Black Widow. Cassandra Nova is reasonably big, even on turn 4, if you play Korg, if you play Rockslide, so that's what she's really here for, but it's fine, you don't need her. You cannot run Gladiator in this list, though. Rocket Groot can just be Negasonic, again, same exact priority thing as before. And Iron Lad has a lot of good hits here. Iron Lad hitting Darkhawk is obviously huge. Iron Lad hitting Cassandra is huge. You don't really want to hit Sam Wilson, but whatever. Iron Patriot on turn 4 or 3 is really good. Zabu is not always great, but if you get a Shang or an Enchantress out of that deal, like there's a lot of really, really good Iron Lad hits here, but it is not a required card. You can run Cull Obsidian, Luffy, or Galacta there. I know those were all high series cards, but that's what we got. All right, so turn 1, you want Zabu over Korg. Turn 2, Zabu over Iron Patriot over Sam. And a reminder, as always, that Iron Patriot can be a snap condition. It's not always a snap condition, but Iron Patriot can be a snap condition when it gives you the right card and you're able to win. Your ideal turn 3 play is Rockslide. Rockslide on turn 3 is sometimes a snap, not always, but sometimes a snap. Rocket and Groot with priority on turn 3 is better than Cassandra. You play Cassandra without priority. I would play Rocket and Groot with priority on 3 over Iron Lad most of the time. And then if you need to win that Iron Patriot lane, you don't have priority, you don't have anything really good, Juggernaut to win that Iron Patriot lane is worthwhile. Turn 4, you want Rock Slide over Iron Lad. Iron Lad is once again great with a million great hits in this list. Turn 5, Darkhawk over 3+2, and ideally you got a Zabu out at some point, so one of your 3s cost 2. And then turn 6 is some combination of Shang, Enchantress, Juggernaut, whatever the tech cards you can to win the game. And that's usually enough, because those tech cards are really, really strong. This is a very, very strong meta for tech cards, and thus you should probably be playing them, because I think you'll have a lot of success. If you'd like to see gameplay from all these decks, because tonight's video is once again streaming the creation of the podcast with some great guests, check out the stream team. Today is Thursday, so the King of Canada will be checking out these lists at 12 p.m. Eastern. Also, don't forget there's a second video coming later today with the OTA stuff, so if you want that, you will have that as well here. Questions of the day. Our first is from Dolphinately. First, I'm missing a few cards that have grown into meta cards after they released. Furthermore, they seem to be strong in Sanctum. If I'm going to be grinding this game mode for the next 2 weeks, should I suck it up and just buy them with tokens? The specific cards are Rocket and Groot, Hydra Bob, Scream, and Anti-Venom. Now, Rocket and Groot and Scream are probably worth buying. However, today is an OTA. Never ever buy right before an OTA. I would strongly urge anyone who's going to buy as much as possible right after an OTA. Scream is completely insane. I think Scream is nerf worthy. It wouldn't shock me to see Scream nerfed later. That's just it. It's that simple. I would not be in any way, shape, or form surprised to see Scream nerfed. If Scream isn't nerfed, you should buy it. Straight up, buy Scream. Go buy Scream. Even with Luke in the meta, they better see Luke exactly on 3 or Scream's insane. You could also just run like Red Guardian or Rogue or something and beat the crap out of it. And Scream keeps all the power it grabs before the Luke Cage is played. Scream is one of the best cards in the game, arguably the best card in the game. Rocket and Groot is probably the best 3. It's certainly the best 3 in Sanctum. It's a card that you have to have if you want to play priority games. Rocket and Groot is great. It's probably the premier 3-drop in the game. I do think it's potentially a nerf candidate, although I don't think that nerf is imminent. So I think that those two, pending what the OTA is later, are relatively safe to buy if they're not touched. Hydra Bob is good in Sanctum, but like Nebula is fine. Nebula Series 3 in a week. Rocket's great. Rocket's really like a series like 1 card. You don't actually need Hydra Bob for this mode. I don't think you need Hydra Bob for anything anymore. I think he's a good 1-drop, right? He's a nice 1-drop to have, but I don't think he's pivotal. Anti-Venom's only really necessary if you want to play toxic decks right now. He's very, very, very good in name of the card in Victoria Handless. So if you have Victoria Hand, you might also want Anti-Venom. But the meta has sort of moved, and that very first list, obviously, right? That style of list is very good. But those aren't Sanctum lists. So if you're planning on playing Sanctum, you don't need to go out of your way for Anti-Venom. However, it sounds like from the way you're phrasing this that you're sitting in an abundance of resources. If you have an abundance of resources, again, pending the OTA, feel free to grab any and all of these cards. They're all good cards, right? They're all cards that your collection is better with. If you're remotely limited or if you're being careful, Rocket and Groot and Scream, I think, are the most important cards here, particularly for Sanctum, which is what you're concerned with. I like this for additional context. I basically wait to hear a review of each card of the weekend. Each of these cards were skipped all the time, but have evolved in ways no one could predict. So actually, I don't think I had Anti-Venom as skippable. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I was like, I think you should probably get Anti-Venom. It's going to end up being really strong. But Rocket and Groot, is the best 3-drop. It's also like super ridiculously replaceable in everything but this mode. It's a really strong card, right? Like you're not sad to have Rocket and Groot, but there's an abundance of good high series 3s. Like I remain completely unconvinced that this is significantly or even really better than Copycat. And is this really better in a lot of decks than Gladiator, so on and so forth. I think Rocket and Groot is very good, but whatever. Hydra Bob's Chronicle has been well told. It was a 1-4 and you shouldn't have bought it, and then it became a 1-5 and you should have bought it, and now it's back to a 1-4. And it's fine. It's a good card. I don't think it's a requirement. I don't think it's necessary. I wouldn't be worried about Hydra Bob. Scream, it just took us 2 weeks to find the right list for. No one in the first week, the lists for Scream were fine. They were like whatever decks. I don't know why. that Scream took that extra time when so many other cards don't. I mean, I guess probably because it created its own deck and like people were really running a lot of counter stuff at the time. But Scream ended up being one of the best cards in the game and is one that you should be absolutely happy to buy at this point. Don't again, pending OTA. I could easily see Scream, if not nerf this time, nerf next time. But if you're concerned about getting more cards, if getting Scream lets you win more games, and winning more games lets you compete better in the Sanctum, and thus you are able to get an extra card, I think buying Scream is worth it because you're basically getting a 2-for-1 at that point. I do think Scream is, if not the best thing, one of the close to one of the best things in the Sanctum mode. We also have no real reason to assume that there will be any nerfs in Sanctum. It's possible that they nerf things in Sanctum. I was looking at the top Sanctum win rate decks before this, and Scream is doing very, very well, but like it's not doing significantly better than like Star Lord, right? The only card that I think would actually be banned from Sanctum that's not right now is Cannonball, because Cannonball's in like damn near every top deck. Like there's a couple that run Gamora, and then there's a couple that are like just straight up different archetypes like Zoo, but almost everything else is running Cannonball, so I could see Cannonball. Um, I guess Scream or Rocket could get like nerf from the mode, but I would be surprised if that happened. I wouldn't be nearly as surprised if Cannonball was like banned, as they were like, well, maybe that's a little too good. Noble Eagle asks if an audiobook counts as reading and if I have any favorite audiobooks. So let's start with that first question, because I think that first question is really interesting. Depends how old you are. As for schooling, right? Like if my 8-year-old son is listening to audiobooks instead of reading, no, that doesn't count as reading. There's a certain modality, and reading affects your brain in very specific ways that audiobooks do not. And I think thus reading, for anyone who doesn't have a disability that prevents it, is an actual pivotal skill as your brain develops, because you need to be able to learn to look at that. There's this other thing that I'm just going to be political and blunt here, that the right does that I think is extraordinarily stupid, with like debate me. If you can't win a debate, then you don't deserve to whatever. Verbal debates are nowhere near as effective, or like, and court cases work the same way, and it boggles my mind. Um, and maybe it's a function of people being more illiterate back then, although America has a current fifth grade fifth grade literacy level, so that's awesome. But a written debate or a written argument is so much more nuanced and thoughtful and easier to parse and easier to like get to the truth of than a verbal one, right? Um, so being able to parse that kind of thing in writing lets you go back, lets you look for arguments, lets you understand better. It provides a depth that verbal arguments cannot and do not. Because verbal arguments will you will hear tone of voice. Um you will be relying on force of argument. You won't be able to go back and double check and fact check. But a written argument, you could always say, okay, so I've got this here. What else can I look at? I can actually go back and look at this argument and see that it makes sense. It gives you time to think and reflect that isn't required by your memory. It's like a physical object that allows you to do that. I'm not saying you can't rewind an audiobook, but it doesn't really work the same way, right? Like you'd have to keep going back to it versus just the ability to read it, and the way that like sort of forms in your brain is different. I think that that is an extremely important skill, and I don't think audiobooks do a good job of replacing that, especially for children and teenagers. Where I really do think, where unless there's again a disability or a specific other reason it cannot, that the act of reading, the act of being able to follow logical reasoning in writing, ap- absolutely strengthens the brain uh, of those who do so. Now, as an adult, it counts as reading. As someone who has is no longer in schooling, who's no longer like trying to get that level of learning, who's no longer trying to do that. I think if you're looking for a book for entertainment as an adult, that it absolutely counts as reading. Who cares? Define it how you want. I don't want to do the definition conversation again. I have this whole definition thing I do all the time, right? Where like I think that definitions are this amazingly complicated thing that we think are very simple. We're like, we could define anything. Like everything we see can be defined with words, and that turns out to be almost impossible. If you want to define listening to an audiobook as reading, have at it. Have fun. What you're really like, what you're really talking about is intaking a book and getting the information from it. And great, have fun. If an audiobook does that for you, that is a perfectly fine and valid definition. Do I have any favorite audiobooks? Nope. I don't actually like audiobooks. Although I did just over vacation finish reading the original Mistborn trilogy. If anyone would like to ask about that, I'm perfectly happy to answer that in a later video. That was a couple really long answers, so let's keep going. Over to the Patreon. Check out patreon.com/snapjudgments if you're interested in hearing more or having more access or just getting early access to these videos. Certain tiers of support come with on-air thanks. I'm going to say thank you to our patron of the month, Ocularis. Then Abigail Heeson, Mandatory Burnout, Irregardless, LAB, Inc., I Am Frostman, Hota Navarrete, Thinking Poker, Primed Ryan, Ryan Burke, Ryan Wood, Kertix Lee, Koire, Kazuchi, Archangel 3K, Black Dahlia, Perovros, The Goat Seeker, Hallowed, Nightmare, Only Fox, Synth, Fat Nick, Dirty Casual, Mr. Kerfuffle, Cables, Ginger Prime, Philip Rakovich, Haplo, Kenny Loggins of the Danger Zone, The Biz Up, Black Jeebus 23, Extra C, and Skippy G, Rhyming Friends. I also haven't heard from you in a bit, Skippy. Shoot me a message. Jessica Gamble, same deal, Jess. Slush Death, Mr. Slush Death, if you're nasty. Kinger Bros, bro, you good? The Great Kazoo, Werewolf, KFC. Oh, Werewolf. I actually also need a message from you, my friend. Kev Hoda, hey Kev. Luna Chris, hopefully you're doing well, my friend. Clam, Forbin, thanks for hanging. Rob Silverman, M. Holland, David G. Wingfield, Stephen, Brian Kaufman, Tristan H. Martin, Jason B. and Mr. Craig Sterry with Matt V. The Real Name Town. Ren Wrench, Corbin John Q and Jim McHugh, Q Down. Yist out A Sage, one big man who never replied to me over on the disc on the Patreon. Milkman for Reals, Cactus. What's up, Cactus? BG Quid Pro Joe, Snap Decisions Joe. Great podcast, by the way, Joe. Models, Mod Supreme, Green Goblin, Unibot, Flan56, The Fuzzy Dunlop, Spectrumix, Hoot, Absolute, Shannon. What's up, Shannon? Hopefully you're doing well. Matt H, DJ, Mikey, Hijinks, No Frickin' Flex, Nick the Greek Geek, who will maybe watch this. If not, he's stuck with me anyway. Hopefully he had fun with that dog. Zodrex, the King of Canada, Denman Falcon. What's up, Denman? Thanks for stopping by the stream. Thorn Newman. If you go check out Thorn Newman's most recent YouTube video, you'll find a game with me we played. Jonesy, Two Ties, the Great Lord Evs, the Pirate King Tucker, and of course Gunny T, where the T stands for not tomorrow, later today, second video. Don't miss it. Check out some other great stuff for now. Peace.